Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a 1v1 game between Kaup and Nush. The map is going to be Hillandale, and spawning in on the left side, we will have Kaup playing as the Pink English, and to the right side, it is going to be the AoE4 legend Nushalbear, also known as Nush, playing as the Orange French. Now, this is one of those rare sightings of Nush on the ranked ladder, and rare sightings of Nush in AoE4 in general, and I've always been very intrigued by him as a player. We know Kaup, he's been playing high-level AoE4 ever since release, as far as I know. But Nush has been on and off. And when he started grinding, especially for specific tournaments, I do recall him playing in, I think, both Golden Leagues. Definitely in Golden League 1, possibly even Golden League 2. And when he started grinding for these events, he has had some remarkable results. He was probably the most accomplished player that had very limited in-game experience in AoE4. And I feel like if Nush started grinding the game hard, and he doesn't even need to go crazy on it, just, you know, get to know the nitty-gritty details of the meta, these very fine details that the experienced players know, then he would be an exceptional player. Probably top 16, but I think, based on raw skills, he could go as high as like top 12, maybe even top 10. It remains to be seen how consistent he will be when it comes to gameplay hours, but I'm always intrigued to take a look at a Nush game, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does against Kaup over here. So French versus English, this is a matchup that's as classic as the game gets. But it's not something that you super frequently see on a map like Hillandale. This map is more about HREs. English, it has gained a lot of popularity on this map, but especially French, it's not a civilization that you commonly see on this map. It's not unprecedented, but people usually prefer a civilization like, as I said, HRE, for instance. Now, the map generation is a little awkward. One of the things I'm noticing is the distinct lack of wood that's available. Basically, very limited amounts on this lowland area. And don't forget, you only have one forest to work with at the top of the hill. Well, it's technically two, but one of them is very tiny. And one of those is pretty much exposed as well for Nush. Still, limited wood available on top of your hill, but we don't have much either on this lowland area. In the meantime, when you look at the gold spots, they are well spread out, but because we don't have a lot of wood in this lowland area, most of these gold spots are wide open in the middle of nowhere. This could be intriguing if the game goes very long. Could make the mobility element and the mobility advantage that the French usually have over the English a lot more valuable. The other interesting thing to look at is that we do have two sacred sites to the north. This kind of feels like a bugged spawn. It's not, like, completely broken, but normally you want those sacred sites to be spread out all across the map. So having two sacred sites to the north over here is definitely rare. Mill up here for Kaup. No farms just yet, but goal obviously is to go for wheelbarrow first. We might see some farms being added after that. Let's see how many sheep he has. That's probably the biggest question mark. I do not see many. In fact, he's got very limited amounts of sheep to work with. And you see Nush is now trying to dive in, spread out that hunt. It's not like the English player is going to cry a lot about all that hunt being spread out, but it's also not something that's great here for the English. I was thinking about how to phrase this, but at the end of the day, English don't care much about the hunt, but it's definitely a good bonus. In fact, we've seen some English builds which somewhat rely on taking the hunt with the upgrade, with the survival techniques upgrade, and then using that for some more delicate timings. Anyway, French Knights will be on the way, as expected. Stone mine being built right now by Nush, so we will see additional town centers from him. Other side, some farms are coming in. No walls just yet for Kaup. He's heavy on the gold. Will get wheelbarrow. And he does have spearmen coming out as well. Now, he is going to be at a disadvantage when it comes to mobility. But one of the ways to compensate for that would be to get some small walls going. If you get walls here, and walls here, that's a tiny investment. But that means that you can focus all your attention to this middle area, so you don't have to chase those knights roaming those map or roaming your base. Because at the end of the day, what Nush is going to try to do is flank around with knights, like you see him do already. Interesting to see Nush going for these walls over here. This is not something that you commonly see from the French against the English, especially not this early on. I'm not against it, because oftentimes you will see the English player trying to sneak a couple of units out there to try and harass you. But in this matchup, I don't think it's the way to play this. Knight dives in, does get the pick. So here's the thing. If this was, let's say, an Abbasid or an HRE play against the English, you would likely be the defender against the English, so having these little walls to prevent the longbows from flanking would be useful. But when you play the French, you are supposed to be the tempo aggressor. I'm not saying that these walls hurt, in fact they will be useful, especially when these longbows start moving up. Or at least, where are the longbows at actually? There should be a couple of longbows out there. Anyway, you see, the exact reason why we do not need these walls right now for Nush is because he's the aggressor with the knights. Against the English, you have to be the tempo aggressor with the French, so you do not need this investment into the walls. It's not a problem, but it's definitely something that he could have skipped. Eco, little unbalanced here for Nush. He's floating a lot of wood, but he doesn't yet have the stone for the second TC. Only opted to go for 2 knights. Range is just now coming in. Love to see how he's stretching out the field with these knights. One of the knights will be accompanied by a scout as well. And you see Kaup is kind of confined in his own base. Now... Ooh, interesting TC spot over here for Nush. I have very mixed feelings about this. First of all, I like that he's securing the hunt, and I like that he's using map control. Kaup is forfeiting all the map, so Nush, the best way to exploit this for him is to try and secure map control and seize those neutral resources. On the other hand, this is a long walking distance for the Vils, and it's definitely going to delay the addition of that second TC. Nush still active with the knights, finally getting those walls up to the north is Kaup. There's a second knight there as well. But you see, Nush is doing a great job over here, just managing the game and making sure that Kaup cannot punish the second TC. More than that, Kaup isn't even scouting the enemy base. Kaup's scout is all the way back at home. Kaup's got absolutely no clue about this second TC coming up. He might sense that it's something that's coming, especially because he doesn't see more knights being added, but he's not certain. It could be that Nush is building up a huge force here. He doesn't see it. Or it could be, indeed, that Nush is just going for a second TC. He can make guesses on what Nush is doing, but he doesn't have visual confirmation. I have to say that I hate how Nush just made these walls, and he didn't do anything on here. Like, the longbows could still deny this gold mine. This is an atrocious tower, by the way. Holy smokes, do I hate this tower. Longbows standing here would shut down the gold mine, and the tower cannot do anything against that. This tower should have been over here. I'm trying not to be very critical, and again, I do want to highlight that these are high-level players, but based on the thousands of games I've seen, I can tell you this is not a great tower. And these are some of the more delicate details that Nush needs to kind of polish, because, as I said, he's a little less experienced in AoE4 than many of the other high-level players are. But this tower is pretty redundant with this wall, and it still doesn't prevent longbows from shutting down the gold mine over here. He's gonna get away with this, because he is still the tempo aggressor in this game, and I appreciate how he's focusing on the defenses. But this tower is giving basically zero value to Nush. Longbows will flank around. This is the time where you really start appreciating these walls. And you see, it's a minimal investment for Nush. It's a tiny section of walls over here to the north, but it makes sure that these longbows cannot do anything. And it's actually getting worse than that for Kaup. Because not only is he moving in here, bumping into walls, it also means that he's walking all the way up there for nothing. He's losing a lot of precious time. And every second that Nush has to build up his archers and to build up that villager lead, it's going to get increasingly difficult for Kaup to punish this. Spearmen will try to torch their way through these walls, but the archers will shift south, and this should be more than enough for Nush to clean this up. Interestingly, he's mixing in a couple of horsemen. I wonder if he just ran out of gold, or this is because he wants to get some units out quicker. Don't forget, horsemen take less time to build. It's 18 seconds against 29. So it's possible that Nush just wanted a couple of horsemen out here quickly, instead of waiting for 1 or 2 knights. Knights are converging in from the north, by the way. They are here to intercept reinforcements. Villagers will be caught in the crossfire. Nush probably should have fled towards that gate, but he is going to have to sacrifice 3 vills here. A 4th one is also going to get picked off. But here come the archers, and this could still be a good cleanup for Nush. Sacrificing 4 vills in exchange for cleaning up this army would be great value. Archers will focus the spears, horsemen slow to engage, waiting for the spearmen to be picked off. But here come the knights from the other side. Still 11 spearmen available here for Kaup. He's getting some good hits going with them. But archers now chasing down the longbows. This army is also slower for Kaup compared to the archers of Nush, so this pursuit is going to be very difficult to get away from. And indeed, Nush, as he should, he's pursuing this army, trying to clean this up as best as he can, while we do have Kaup mixing in some men-at-arms, trying to link up with these forces in the middle of the field, and possibly force a decisive engagement. Second tower is much better here for Nush. Again, I have mixed feelings about double arrow slits over here. I feel like Nush is playing a super safe game. This is one of those games where he looks at his position and he doesn't want to throw. But for many of these moves that he's making, I would call it overcautious. These initial walls that came up, those were overcautious for the situation that he was in that moment. Double arrow slit towers, you could argue that these are a little overcautious as well, because he's got a formidable army here, and technically he was on pursuit. I'm not against this, especially because he doesn't have a lot of knights, but I think these arrow slits probably weren't like super necessary. It's gonna help, and it's not going to throw the game away in any way. But this is one of those cases where you're investing into a couple of things that you do not necessarily need. Against an exceptional opponent, those could backfire. In this game, he's fine, but we have seen in this game a couple of times that he's sometimes investing into slightly unnecessary things, and in a closer game, those could backfire. He needs to use these knights to something. He might be just waiting for a flanking maneuver, but honestly, in this scenario, I could see him just diving the lumberjacks. What are you going to do against that many knights? He's waiting for chivalry to heal. Siege engineering now on the way for Kaup, but this is the moment where the French reached a critical mass. This is the moment when they have enough archers to hold back the English just with the archers, meaning that you can detach the knights, intercept reinforcements, or hit the opponent's eco. And this is exactly what Nush needs to do. Keep producing archers, hold off this army with them, and then use the knights to raid. Behind this, he's also banking up a lot of resources. Feels like he wants to go to Castle Age. It's a little risky when you're about to get pushed like this, but I think he's going to be fine. First of all, he sees the full extent of his opponent's army, so he knows fully well that his archers should be enough to hold this. By the way, he's losing a couple of archers to the tower, definitely a little wasteful. But more importantly, because he knows the exact size of Kaup's army, he knows that he can likely hold this with the Feudal Age army, or at least slow this down, get to Castle Age and get a Mangonel out. If he gets a Mango out, this push is just going to stall out for Kaup. Knights not finding value inside Kaup's base. Kaup does have siege engineering, but because his lumberjacks were threatened, he had to pull them back at least a couple of times. Means that he didn't really have enough wood to make rams immediately. Castle Age could be on the way for Nush over here. Likely, it's going to be the second landmark, whose name I totally forgot because, well, I missed like 3 weeks of casting, but anyway, Royal Institute it is, yes, the non-Guildhall landmark. He doesn't have a lot of knights, so Royal Bloodlines isn't going to have a gigantic impact. But in this scenario, this is going to come down, this game is going to come down to a critical fight. If this push doesn't work out for Kaup, he's out of this one because his eco is just so much weaker. Love the board being taken, by the way, by Nush. So, having a guild hall and planning for a long game makes little sense for Nush. In exchange, if he gets Royal Institute, maybe gets Cantled Settles, which is cheap and easy to get, that's going to buff his knights immediately. He's not going to be given enough time to get Royal Bloodlines. He won't even have the gold for it, potentially. Oh no. Wolf is eating the villagers, by the way, but we're being distracted by this push. First tower is going to be lit on fire by the Rams. Knights are now coming out. Villagers could throw a couple of torches. And the Knights, they're not engaging the Rams. They could have done so much damage over here. And it looks like the Knights are getting pushed back over here. Archers now getting ready for the Castle Age upgrades. This is the moment where Kaup needs to make the push. If the Castle Age upgrades come in for Nush, it's going to be difficult for Kaup to push this, but the Castle Age upgrades, they are not in just yet. And the veterancy on the Knights is clicked first here for Nush, despite only having 2 Knights on the field. This is getting very bad here for Nush. Kaup is diving this town center. He's now camping under it. Rams knocking on the walls, or the production buildings rather, and the Knights are being picked off. I think Kaup has this. Kaup is now diving under the TC, and it looked so good for Nush. But the timing of that Castle Age, just unfortunate for him. As I said, it's dangerous to try and castle when a timing push like this is coming. I felt like he had enough to hold this, and maybe if he stands and fights under the towers, maybe if he uses the Knights to deal with the Rams, or at least try to do that, this could have been different. Maybe he just needed a little bit more of a mass when it comes to the Archers. Hard to tell where this slipped for him, but at the end of the day, going into Castle Age when you're about to get pushed is always dangerous, and it did not pay off here for Nush. Now his eco is being overrun. He still has a villager lead, but the army count right now is 47-0. And now we could just see these landmarks being destroyed by the Rams. Kaup, with his opponent in Castle Age, knows fully well that this is going to have to be an all-in, and he's going to do just that. More Rams are being added. Longbows aren't protecting the Rams over here. Opportunity opens up for Nush to snipe one of them. And there's the Siege Workshop. There is a world in which Nush comes back into this game. Chances are rather slim, but don't forget, he's got the eco lead. The gold mine here is unpressured. The board here is not being pressured either. But this is good value. Longbows are doing a good job over here in this corner. Still, if Mangonels come out, and if Nush can stabilize, he could still salvage this game. Again, the second battering ram is also unprotected. Nush finding opportunities to pick those off. He's up against so much pressure, though. So much pressure. He found an opportunity to get gold, but now the Longbows are finding these villagers. We're seeing a great way of playing this resource denial game by Kaup. He saw that the gold mine is being denied over here. He saw that there are no villagers on food. So what's the natural response from your opponent? He's going to try to seek food sources, gold sources elsewhere. Response from Kaup to that will be to probe those resources and try to get villager picks in these pocket ecos. That's exactly what Kaup is doing. He should probe these gold mines. Food. He's probing the hunt right now. Could even send a unit here to check, because right now you see Nush is moving in that direction. First Mangonel is out here. Could find some good value. Archers also have veterancy now. Good Mangonel shots by Nush. He refuses to give up on this game, but the Longbows do close the distance. Second Mangonel nowhere to be seen. And you see, now that the Longbows are close, slow and steady, they can start grinding down that Mangonel. DC fire is helping a lot, though. And casualties are getting higher and higher over here for Kaup. Town Center is mostly getting rid of most of those Longbows. Stable on the way here for Nush. He lost the School of Cavalry. He needs something that he can use to produce Knights on. He's floating a lot of resources, by the way. I really think he should have tried making a couple of stables over here, maybe. Build up some Knights to intercept reinforcements with. But it's difficult to say right now. His position is looking sad. He's going to have to sacrifice a couple of villagers to keep this Mangonel alive, but the Mangonel is doing a great job over here. He's decimating those Longbows. problem is that despite those longbows being picked off, more and more are coming. In the meantime, Nush is losing most of his eco. 34 villagers killed already. And despite the fact that Nush did his best to clean up these longbows, and he really did a great job with this, at the end of the day, it's too late now. You see, these outlying resources that we have over here, they've been found, and now Nush lost all his eco lead. This castle here attempted on the left flank will be denied as well. And that basically means that despite Nush being able to, I guess, secure portions of his initial base, he lost his eco lead. And more longbows are just coming. More and more are on the way. Spearmen as well. Could see some men-at-arms being mixed in as well. And you see this castle isn't going up. Food is being denied away from Nush. He's down to 120 food per minute. He is going to get rid of this battering ram as well, but his eco has been pretty much shattered, actually. "55 villagers only for Nush. He's sitting at 58 population. Kaup now has a villager lead of 4, but more importantly, he's sitting at 54 army. This defensive castle might salvage the game. It's really hard to say. I'm trying not to say that the game is over, but it really looks that way. A defensive castle here is definitely going to buy some time for Nush, but I feel like he has lost too much. If he still had like a 15 or so villagers lead, I would say it's a legitimate possibility that he stabilizes and leverages that eco advantage, but that's not realistic right now. Kaup is building up a train of rams over here against that keep. Don't forget, folks, boiling oil has been nerfed in the most recent patch, so it's not as strong as it used to be. New stables are being added. Candle settles would be nice to have, but you would want to grab that on the Royal Institute. If anything, you could make a justification for Royal Bloodlines right now if you want to go heavy on the Knights. Enlistment incentives is tricky. It would give you a discount on the Knights, and you're definitely trying to use that here. But it's something that pays off rather slow, especially when you cannot just mass-produce Knights easily because your eco is so feeble. He's got a lot of gold, by the way. I could see him trying to buy some food and building up a mass of Knights, but I think he just spotted those longbows and the train of rams, and he will tap out of this one. Lesson learned, I guess, folks. You do not want to age up as you're about to get pressured by a timing push. Sometimes you can get away with it, but Kaup diagnosed this very well. He knew fully well that the moment Castle Age hits for his opponent, he needs to strike. Otherwise, he will be facing Mangonels. Otherwise, he will be facing the Veteran Archers, possibly even heavily upgraded Heavy Knights from the French player. And he used that timing attack well to just eliminate that threat. For Nush, it's hard to say what could have gone differently. I feel like he needed 10 more archers to stall that push out, and then he could have gone to Castle Age. Or maybe he could have rushed Castle Age a little bit more. I think he built the landmark with like 7 vills. In a scenario like that, you could justify 20 vills building the landmark. Just get it out as soon as possible because you do need the Mangonels. Anyway, with that, the game ends. And once again, I have to thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, I greatly appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. These metrics help me a lot run the channel, get new opportunities, and just sustain what I do over here for you. So if you've enjoyed, I greatly appreciate if you subscribe, and I will see you in the next cast.